This year, I turned the big 3-0 and did a 19-day train trip around the US in honor of this major milestone. You see, unlike what social media or Reddit may say, I was looking forward to it. The girlies who I know are thriving in their 30s, and despite all the negative connotations, I couldn't wait to join them. But as the day finally arrived on August 27th, I woke up on the Lakeshore Limited from New York City to Chicago. Good morning, I am 30. And started thinking about the lessons I've learned through my decade of traveling in my 20s. A lot has changed from my days of sleeping in 15-person hostel dorms in Europe to now sleeping in private rooms on sleeper train cars around the US. So in honor of the end of 2024 and building this YouTube community to 9,000 subscribers this year, I wanted to share a bit of my own travel origin story through 5 life/travel lessons I have learned along the way. And if you are a 20-something, ambitiously curious and adventurous traveler looking to make sense of the path that you are on, I hope these little nuggets of post-20s wisdom resonates with you. With the first one being, focus on the resources you do have instead of what you don't. We all start our travel journeys differently, and I started my travels abroad when I was 20 years old. I was a junior in undergrad studying Spanish, and I wanted to go abroad, but I had no money to pay for these short-term study abroad programs. So I focused on what I did have, which were scholarships, grants, and student loans, but we're not gonna talk about that last one right now. With my FAFSA, I spent a semester living and learning in Granada, Spain. I visited the Alhambra more times than I can count, kind of crashed a wedding in the Rift Mountains during my Morocco exchange program, and wore a purple wig as I partied all night during Carnival in Cadiz. But ultimately, I fell head over heels in love with international travel. Because I loved making the world my personal geography class, I wanted more, which led me to lesson number 2, which is you need to redefine what success means to you. Not your mom, not your dad, not your grandma, not even your college advisor, you. That semester abroad was so impactful for me because I am your classic Black girl, straight A's overachiever. I thought in order to be successful, I had to go off and get my PhD, but this semester abroad in Spain was the first time I learned more from outside the classroom instead of inside the classroom. So instead of applying for grad school, I literally abandoned all of my applications and applied for a Fulbright fellowship to teach English in Spain and live in Spanish wine country. This time leaving for a year, I packed my bags again and spent my 22nd year of life in Prague for Christmas, Greece for spring break, and visited like 15 wineries. So I can say I think I got an A on that assignment. But once the year was complete, I felt at a crossroads again. This time it wasn't due to money or success, but it actually led me to lesson number 3, which is that you don't have to have everything figured out all the time. And this was a hard lesson for me to learn, especially as a Virgo who loves to plan, because at the end of my Fulbright year, I just didn't know what I wanted to do next. I looked into nannying and au pairing, which would have been terrible for me, by the way, because that is not my calling. So I asked myself, do I stay in Spain? Do I move to another country? Do I go to grad school? Do I move home? There were so many decisions to be made, but I opted for the latter and ended up moving home for a year and being in the AmeriCorps program called Public Allies. But wanting to get back into the international world and blend my experiences in AmeriCorps/Public Allies with Fulbright, I ended up going to St. Louis to enroll in an international social work grad program at the age of 24. Though I was back to my overachiever ways, I did have a refreshed travel lens, so I mapped out my 2 years of grad school to see how I could finesse some travel adventures out of it. I took a class in Berlin and stayed for the summer as part of my internship, immersing myself in a new culture this time, and solo traveled to London and Amsterdam. But as I returned home and started applying to international jobs, COVID hit. Those international social work dreams that I had all went down the drain in March 2020. Yikes. Though I remembered lesson number 3 that I couldn't have everything planned out all the time, I did plan and prepare some big things post-graduation, and all of that became non-existent. And at 25, I graduated in my apartment due to COVID-19. Therefore, I learned lesson number 4. Grief isn't always reserved for death. When COVID-19 hit, so many lives were changed and lost. Our worlds were turned upside down, and there wasn't a book I could read or a plane I could catch, literally, because everything was grounded to escape from the grief I felt. For so long, I thought grief was only acceptable when someone died, but I learned from that experience that it's also a byproduct of change. I was grieving the life I thought I was going to live post-grad school, gallivanting the globe as an international social worker, and making the world my geography class like I did when I studied abroad. To say I felt defeated was an understatement, and I did hold out hope that those international jobs I was applying to pre-COVID would come back once COVID was gone, but I didn't even know what that meant because I had never lived through a pandemic at that time. But I moved on and I started anew as a remote social worker, working from home in my childhood room, as you see here instead. Now 30 and almost in 2025, that pandemic pivot was 4.5 years ago. I would say I adapted pretty well, which led me to the final lesson, which is find joy and pleasure in the chaos. One of the first books I read post-grad was Pleasure Activism by Adrienne Maree Brown. And this book talks more about the politics of feeling good when you're working in community organizing type of work. However, there is a question on the back of the book here that says, how can we awaken within ourselves desires that make it impossible to settle for anything less than a fulfilling life? And I feel like I did just that, because the book talks about what does it mean to build a fulfilling life in the work that you are doing. I took the wildest and least ideal post-grad situation of graduating in a pandemic, moved home and laid low for a little while with my family until it was safer to leave my house, focused on Sojournies, focused on myself, made Sojournies a business in this time frame, and really maximized my opportunities as a remote social worker. I fell in love with YouTube and started vlogging all my travel experiences in Peru, Colombia, South Africa, and Mexico. I fell in love with train travel after my first scenic train ride through the Rocky Mountains on the Amtrak California Zephyr, and I learned to love the version of myself at home just as much as the version I learned to love abroad. All that to say, 10 years of traveling has taught me a lot about the world, so I could probably do 10 more of these videos. Whether I was at home or abroad, my 20s did feel like a roller coaster of different travel experiences and life experiences all at once. But I think viewing my career and my life as a map and not a ladder, which is something I say all the time, so I heard in a TikTok, so I will try to link that TikTok in the description box below, has helped me come out of my shell as I solo travel and make new friends. And it's taught me about privileges that I didn't even know I had that affected people who I didn't even know existed around the world. I don't believe in rushing my season because I do think everything happens for a reason, but I am walking into my 30th year. Now I'm about 6 months in because my birthday was in August, but I'm walking into my 30s and into 2025 with an open mind, open passport, open wallet to manifest more money coming into said wallet to pay for the trips that need the passport for in 2025. So I hope this video gave you a boost of inspiration or pleasure or joy in the chaos that you may currently be experiencing in your 20s or 30s or 40s. I know I have a very wide audience. As always, stay curious. I am wishing you all the best in 2025, and I will see you next year.